This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's community access radio station Plains FM 96.9 and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
It's time for Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9, citizen-made radio.
Greetings, kia ora, and welcome to Emergence News. This program is produced and presented by Share International volunteers. We are not a recruitment organisation and seek no membership. We are not affiliated with any religious group. However, we respect the truth at the heart of and common to all the major religions and also spiritual traditions. Joining me today on the program are two Christchurch-based volunteers and regular contributors to this program, Peter and Shafia. Hi there, Peter.
Hi there, Nigel. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. And I'm really looking forward to today's program because we're dealing with a topic, fearlessness.
That's right.
And it's something that it's a subject that we've touched on fleetingly, but to dedicate the program to it is a different thing, and I've enjoyed. I think we've all enjoyed working behind the scenes. So we look forward to the program. Now, fearlessness, driving change. That's your task. That's what you're covering today.
That's right. Well, in actual fact, the latest Share International has presented a compilation, and the themes have come from Maitreya the Christ, that book by Benjamin Creme, and also A Master Speaks, volumes 1 and 2. So these are straight from the horse's mouth.
Well, speaking of Benjamin Creme, I had a look at his views, and many years ago he did a lecture on fearlessness, and he talks about physical fear and psychological fear, and of course physical fear. He goes into the pleasure pain principle, and of course we learn all about that back in infants, when we're infants, and avoiding fear and enjoying pleasure. And of course, many human beings spend much of their lifetimes avoiding fear and finding ways to escape that, don't they?
That's right, yes.
And the psychological fear, well, I guess the big psychological fear that has been almost indoctrinated into us over many centuries is the fear of death.
Definitely, yes. And it's one that we are dealing with.
Yeah.
Okay, so Shafia, you're looking at some examples of people who are demonstrating fearlessness in a very hostile political environment.
That's right, yes.
And what country are we talking about?
We're talking about America, and if we've got time, we'll cover a couple of examples from here as well.
Examples here in New Zealand. Good, good. I've got one example coming up in just a moment too. As volunteers on this program, we consider our job, our task, to pass on information. So what you do when you're listening to this program, what you do with that information is up to you. The purpose of this program is to make known information about the emergence of the spiritual hierarchy. And this emergence can be described as a gradual externalization of the masters of wisdom. And this includes the head of the hierarchy, the Lord Maitreya. This externalization, this gradual process, has and continues to reveal great changes taking place. We are currently within a period of great activity and tension as we depart from the age of Pisces into a new age, which is commonly referred to as the age of Aquarius. That's what this program is essentially about. Presenting to you information and examples pertaining to the reappearance of Maitreya. The work of Maitreya and the Masters has been vast, and throughout our history has been mostly esoteric. From behind the scenes, their guidance and assistance has been critical throughout the history of planet Earth. Many of the greatest men and women who have walked on our planet have been the masters themselves. Also initiates, world disciples and aspirants, often affiliated with the hierarchy knowingly, but also sometimes unknowingly. And we've talked about examples of that in the past, haven't we? Like Churchill was probably not really aware of the
spiritual aspects of life
at all, but he had a very important job to do.
He did, yes, and he was a third-degree initiate, so he was well on the way.
Examples of some of these influential people have been featured on this program, and we have referred to many influential individuals from history who have brought much inspiration to humanity, such as many of the teachers we talk about, Krishna, Confucius and many others on Emergence News, which all have helped us through the process of evolution to move forward towards the light. Now, if you hear us speaking on this program about the health of our planet, our environment, or issues such as housing, education and health, it is because they are the key priorities of Maitreya. He doesn't come here to establish a new religion or even attract followers. He is more concerned with the major issues facing humanity, the basic needs of all humans, needs that should be considered a basic birthright for us all, such as eradicating poverty, needless starvation, natural justice, and equality for all people. And on that subject, I thought a good example was right here in New Zealand recently, we had Māori Language Week. And I don't think I've ever seen or heard or experienced our media organisations in this country embrace Māori Language Week so wholeheartedly as this year in 2020. Now, the job wasn't perfect, far from it, but I was really heartened to see the television stations identifying themselves in Māori. Huge step forward. News stories and weather forecasts, educational opportunities were creatively used to educate and celebrate Māori culture, especially the language. And I saw a lot of examples of young Māori children singing and exhibiting examples of their culture. And I think this is a good example of equality and Maitreya's teachings in regard to uplifting all people on the planet.
And
not
celebrating diversity.
Absolutely. And I thought it was a good example of the statement from Maitreya in message number 19, and I quote, "The time of my coming is over. The time of my emergence has arrived. My face and words will become known." And I think we're seeing examples constantly of that, that his emergence has arrived. It's current and it's in the present. We just need to open our eyes. These teachings are neither designed to appeal to the left or right-wing political views. They are designed to create justice and fairness for all, despite your political persuasion. The story of Maitreya is a story worth listening to because you can subscribe to the politics and theology of every faith imaginable. Maitreya works among all men and women, whatever your faith, including those who do not have a faith. Peter is up next as we look at what's driving change around us, fearlessness, driving change. Peter is next. Welcome back to Emergence News, and on the panel, part of the team today is Peter. And Peter, you've got your head in the latest Share International magazine.
That's right, it's September magazine, and I was taken, Nigel, by the article on courage and fearlessness, and this is actually quotes from Maitreya and the master who was overshadowing Benjamin Creme. And we've heard about it before, about fearlessness and the teachings, and but not so much. We've touched on it from time to time. But in this time of crisis, we need to hold fear at bay, I think, because there's certainly been a lot of it out there. And if we take a philosophical view of the world, humankind has lived on this planet for millions of years. And all of us had had countless lives here. We have literally died thousands of times before. It is a great release for our soul. Where is the fear, then? We have died so many times before. As Maitreya says, seek and find that peace that forever dwells within us all, and know God. In other words, we are part of God. There's no question of that. And we need to overcome the fear. And I looked at a message here in this article on this compilation, and the Master Joel Kuhl says that all disciples must have courage, first and foremost. The world will never rid of illusion until we have courage. One of the duties of true disciples, says DK, is to speak out openly against whatever authority exists in the world, scientific, religious, political, at any level, with which we disagree and see further and clearer than it does. If he thinks that they are wrong, it behoves the disciple to say so. If he just skulks and pretends that he has no point of view on the subject, and nothing better, clearer, more true to give than he is a disciple only in name. The true disciple is the disciple who knows no fear. So a lot of us, of course, are aspiring to follow these spiritual teachings, and this is advice for all of us.
It's interesting, I think immediately of Jesus of Nazareth. There was an example of an initiate who exhibited fearlessness, but of course he ended up on a cross.
Yes.
So I guess,
but he knew that was going to happen, and he did it in spite of that.
But a lot of Christians and non-Christians would look at that story and think, gee, I'm not going to speak out. Look what happens.
Yes.
And so there's fear there. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about people that operate with fearlessness, it's a fantastic ideal, but to actually exhibit it and demonstrate it is a huge challenge, isn't it?
It is a challenge, yes, indeed. And men stand at a point of revelation which will soon sweep away discordant voices and attitudes. They will know more keenly the meaning and purpose of their existence and the means by which that knowledge is brought into their awareness. Soon, very soon, now men will grow overnight, as it were. Have no fear, a new world is in the making, which will restore men's faith and courage in equal order. That's from Benjamin Creme's Master, and it's from a gift from the highest.
And I think, we're seeing it happen in the grassroots. We're not actually seeing it in the media, are we? But underneath there is an awful lot of, sort of wonderful things happening that we try and bring here on the programme because...
yes, that's right.
Yes, increasingly there's more drive, there's more passion, there's more conviction, there's high ideals, and some of these people... They're starting to, the tall poppy syndrome, but there's more, and that used to get crushed in this country. And it's not being crushed so much. I think people are listening more now.
Yeah.
People are responding to that level of courage.
That's right. And you were talking before about David Tamahiri?
John Tamahiri.
John Tamahiri,
yes. Currently he's the co-leader of the Maori Party.
Yes.
And he is saying things which I think many Maori... have wanted to be spoken publicly and openly, overtly, for a long period of time. And he's not putting up with it any longer. And I love him or loathe him, agree with his politics or disagree with his politics, you have to admire his courage during this election campaign.
Fantastic, yeah. So a disciple must, above all, have courage, steadfastness, patience, the ability to stay there and not run away from difficulties which have been placed before us to bring about the best in us. We must meet these difficulties in life because the soul arranges in such a way that when we overcome them, we have progress. We've taken a step forward. That quote is from Benjamin Creme again, The Art of Cooperation, which is a book that we've used quite a lot of Benjamin Creme's. And another quote here from Maitreya's message number 99. And I don't know if our listeners are aware, but Maitreya gave 140 messages altogether. And we have those on recording, and at each meditation we play one of these, and we've got Maitreya's spoken word. My simple truth that God and love are one is awakening men to the promise of the future. This makes simple my task, my friends. Show yourself as men and women ready to act as heroes, as warriors of old, filled with joy and love, ready for the tasks of succour and love, which will fall to you. Have no fear, my brothers, your shoulders shall be strengthened by me. That's, as I say, from Maitreya's message number 99. Mm. And that's certainly fantastic.
Yeah, well, those words were uttered back in March 1980.
Yes, yes. Well,
And as we've said on this program, Maitreya has been with us, since 77? 77.
Yes, that's right. So it's over 40 years now, isn't it?
Yes, so you would expect the signs of the emergence to be becoming increasingly obvious.
Yes, well, I mean, he did predict a wilderness period, didn't he? And I think this is what we've been seeing with this COVID-19, and people just don't really know how to handle it. Not only people individually, but governments too.
Yes, that's right.
Don't know what to do they?
No, because they're so caught up in the economics of the world, and that's the only way that you survive, And
that's right.
We've got to try and find a new way.
We've got to find a new way of recovering, which isn't necessarily based just on the economics and profit making.
This is the Emergence News on Plains FM. For more information, go to shareinternational.org. You do not have to live in fear. No one has to live in fear. Fear is a glamour, like every other glamour. The worst there is underlying, I believe, more than any other glamour. It must be overcome by anyone who has any hope of standing before the initiator. You cannot take initiation, become initiate while you live in fear. You can never become a master till you have not just courage, but the total absence of fear. You need courage to tackle the fear and to demonstrate in your life that forward-looking, advancing impetus and effort of a true disciple. That was from Benjamin Krem's Maitreya's Mission, Volume 2.
Thank you, Peter. You're with Emergence News, and now Shafir with a look at some individuals who are demonstrating fearlessness in a hostile political environment.
Yes, and I think we've all been a bit of a fan of Alexandria OcasioCortez. Mm-hmm. She is, at the moment, one of the shining lights in the present-day fight for social justice and equity for all. An American from Puerto Rico, her stunning election victory against an establishment incumbent created shockwaves through the American Democratic Party. She has, since her election, been a clear and fearless advocate for those who suffer under the present system, never backing down from speaking truth to power. She has been one of the drivers of the New Green Deal and Medicare for All, policies that her party have been somewhat reluctant to embrace. When you hear her talking, she'll often talk about her time as a waitress, about experiencing back-breaking work with no breaks, no benefits and no protections. She says, I was working for 4 years in one of the most exploitive environments in the country, which is the food industry. And so I was shoulder to shoulder with undocumented people. And I think that gives her a real insight into what people are going through in America. And
her employment at that time was vital to the economic survival of her family.
Yes, that's right. Yes. But there's a lot more to her, about her that helps us understand, who she is and what drives her. She was born into a Catholic Pentecostal family and very, very close to her father. And he died at the age 48 when she was in college, and he had been a huge influence in her life. She said her parents raised her to always think about what is the right thing to do, to think about not so much what you want to do, but how you want to be. That's a great thing to think about, isn't it? Mm. She says that she's always been guided. This has always guided her decisions. Her dad was Catholic, but someone who was very philosophical and never felt himself to be above anyone else, but one with all people. He would also read books like the Bhagavad Gita, and AOC, as she's often called, was a real daddy's girl and wanted to be like him. She says her spirituality has developed from being curious about the myriad of ways of finding God, of finding love, of finding peace, and of cherishing humanity and the world. So after college, she studied in Nigeria alongside midwives there and was deeply impressed by the sense of community and friendship. She said the whole evening would be spent preparing tea over the fire and just talking and listening to music. She said that the interaction was the sun around which life revolved, fellowship and connection. In contrast, the sun around which Americans revolve is work. Their whole life is organised around that, and everything else is on the margins. She says she realised that her society had symptoms of illness, but she did not know what it was, and she realised she wanted to work at the macro level, focusing on 6 systems. She got a double degree in economics and international relations. The economics allowed her to analyse systems, and the other allowed her to dive deeply into the traditions of social justice in the US and across the world. Her first work was social justice work, and she worked in the Bronx and organised with the National Hispanic Institute storytelling for young children, middle schoolers and second graders, telling stories where they are the hero. She says that was really important work, she felt, and at the time she did not think electoral politics would ever be in her path. She says, "I'm blunt, and I challenge some of the basic predicates that our society take for granted. I do not think capitalism is the best thing ever, or that we can capitalise our way out of poverty," which is quite a realisation for an American, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to read this. She was asked. It comes from an article in the September Share International magazine, and I just wanted to give this complete answer that she gives from there, because it really illustrates Maitreya's teachings on honesty, sincerity, and non-attachment, and I think it shows actually what we need to do to stop being fearful. So she was asked by the questioner, it's very clear you have a special calling. You bring together intellect and a spirituality, courage as well as fortitude, so that it's not just a politician, it's a particular kind of statesperson in a political system that's trying to be a force for good, driven by moral and spiritual forces. And her answer is, well, I think in this context, what I find to be the spiritual practice that I have been practicing the most ever since I won my primary is non-attachment. And that is, I think, the most important thing in my position, because politics, the immense intimidation of the pressure to conform, is entirely based around your attachments to these things. If I can threaten what you are attached to, then I can make you do what I want you to do. My mission is to advance principles of a better world, and if I'm overly attached to this seat, I cannot do my job. And so, the first thing I have to do is practice non-attachment to my seat. I made decisions in my first year in Congress, from the very first day joining a sit-in in Nancy Pelosi's office, that I knew would result in a primary challenge against me, that I knew was inviting millions of dollars to be dumped against me and my election. And I had to practice non-attachment, saying, I do not need this. I cannot need this if I'm going to advance a better world. What an amazing...
Well, that's fantastic.
Yes.
Well, she is amazing, and it was like a bit of a miracle, her success, her win in New York. And there is a documentary on Netflix which has been on, and I think it's still screening. Mm. And it covers her and a number of other women who were standing for Congress.
Yes.
But she got in, and she was really up against the system, wasn't she?
She was, definitely.
My word.
Yes. So she says, I have to practice non-attachment to ego and to esteem. I cannot be attached to social acceptance in a small class of powerful and wealthy people. If I am attached to social acceptance in that class, who frankly are my colleagues in Congress, I will not be able to do my job. That in particular was extremely painful. Imagine going to work every day and your co-workers, you may not agree with them, but you respect them, turn their backs on you, 90% of them. And so I find myself going through this whiplash of going home to my community on the weekends and people saying, keep going, thank you, keep fighting. And then flying or taking a train to Washington and being treated or feeling like I'm a very bad person. And I think that's, was a real enlightenment for me about how we can overcome fearlessness. It's non-attachment, really, isn't it? It's sort of like a real example of how...
That's right, disciple in action.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Yes, definitely.
And a very good example of one of Maitreya's teachings, detachment,
exactly.
which we've spoken about on the program, but there it is, a wonderful example of somebody in a very high-profile position.
Yeah.
Yes.
Puts her career on the line
Yes.
because she knows it's the only way she can access change effectively
Yes.
That's right.
and long term.
And don't we need more politicians to do that? We need them more to stand up for what they know is right rather than actually trying to curry favour with the people around them.
And seeking re-election.
Yes.
Oh, if I do that, I may not get re-elected. She's
Yes.
clearly putting that on the line, isn't she?
Yes.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah, amazing example. And as I say, one to watch. I could see her being the President of the United States in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just finish off with a little quote that she says, which I think really, she's been very well known for her humility, and this is something that she says. So much of the journey that I've been blessed with in my life is not so much a result of individual choice, while that certainly plays a role. I am just one person that's part of a greater context. I am one point that is the result of waves of generational inertia, of thousands, if not millions, of people that have been fighting for justice in small and large ways. I'm just one part of that constellation.
All this information can be found on the Share International website, www.share-international.org. Scorpio Books in Christchurch carries the magazine and some books. And also don't forget the podcasts, which are available on the Plains FM website.
We welcome your comments, questions and feedback. Please contact us at emergencenews@gmail.com.
The opportunity to join our transmission is available Monday and Wednesday evenings and Thursday mornings, which gives us the possibility to do a service meditation in conjunction with Masters.